Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Feedback Friday Art Edition. I'm your host, Jacob Johnson. Hi, everybody. Hello. How's everyone doing? So it's going to be a short one today, potentially even historically short, for me at least. We have our kind of company huddle. We do it every last Friday of the month. We are one day off from it being next week, but hey. So usually Dave will kind of like do the stream on those days, but since we're all working from home, we're going to be doing the meetup remotely. That means that I can stream and be a part of the meeting. So I'm going to go until lunch. I'm going to take lunch an hour later. So we'll go until 2 o'clock, and then I'll take lunch and have time for the meeting. So it'll be one full segment of me doing some kind of art related to the floating islands. Hello all, how are you? Hope you're well. So I don't necessarily have a specific illustration that I'm going to work on today. There's kind of like a whole slew of things we could work on. I figure since it's a short day, we could just work on some sketch. So there's kind of like, obviously, a bunch of the power type mice that we still need to have created, so we could do some sketches for those. But one of the areas, one of the avenues that we haven't really kind of explored yet, and I think it would be useful to start to look into, would be maybe working on kind of some ideas, some concepts for bosses, and they're kind of like mini bosses. Nothing I don't think will kind of necessarily come rendering out of these, but it'd be more of an exploration of like what could they be, so that the whole art team has some stuff to kind of like chew on and kind of develop from that point. Since we'll need to start to figure that out, at some point soon. Yeah, the gang boss mouse, gotta bring her in. You know what? That actually might be an interesting way to kind of adapt her. Would be to kind of make her the boss, or at least a mini boss for the law power type. That could be kind of cool. Now, the current game design spec is that there's kind of like one boss for each of the 8 power types we're using for the floating islands. So basically all of them except Rift. And then right now there's kind of like 4 mini bosses, and those are kind of like characters you have to defeat to kind of get to a different stage of gameplay. So those ones aren't as tied to power type, actually, so that could be interesting to try and figure out. But yeah, there's actually a lot of bosses for this. Now, again, all kind of like, not set in stone, but yeah, I think we're pretty solid as a team on kind of like what direction we're going in with the design. I'm doing more with the prototype now as well. So yeah, it's coming along really well, actually, especially considering how everyone's working remotely. We're really quite stoked about this design, where it's going, and how... my computer just froze? What's up? My camera froze. Why? It's a good look I got going, in case you can still hear my voice. Alright, well, maybe if I switch around. No? Okay. Well, don't know why my camera decided to freeze on that, or if it is just for my display, but let me see. I'm gonna skip ahead in the playback. Yeah, I'm good and frozen there. Well, it might be a cameraless stream. I don't know what's up with this camera. It kind of gets a bit wonky at times. So, yeah, okay, the audio is still going good. In that case, I guess I'll just hide the camera if it's not going to behave. And we'll just have a voiced stream. You can listen to my buttery voice. Actually, I'm going to switch to this beautiful shot while I open up files without revealing any spoilers just yet. Those will come in time. All right, so just really can't quite get that poppy seed. It's right there. It's so close. All right, nice. Template file should be fine. And new window. All right, so I can switch back the camera now. All right, so I'm gonna bring the chat over here and pop it on top. Gotta open up a program that lets me do that. And there we go. Set on top, enable click through. You can turn that down a bit. Oh. I need to resize it before I actually lock it. No? Did I? There we go. Okay. Well, maybe, I think I put it on the left side before and that worked pretty well, so maybe we'll just leave it on this side. All right, and now, ooh, there we go. Oh, is it not scrolled down all the way? Oh, it's fine. Okay. All right. So, what we're looking for is right now, just concept-wise, and we're still kind of developing the idea. Weather kind of phenomena, less storm-related because we have kind of the Machu Picchu, but since we're dealing with these kinds of floating islands, you're up in the atmosphere, I feel like kind of using weather-related stuff is appropriate for it. So one of the kind of name ideas that we have is like the wardens of the sky. So it could be like the warden of wind, the warden of precipitation or rain, warden of frost, I think is kind of cool sounding. And they're less kind of like related to a specific power type as well. Because these characters currently can show up on any of the power type islands, and we don't want you to have to switch out to, oh, you have to switch to your draconic trap. Meanwhile, you're sitting on a shadow island, so we want it to be kind of smooth gameplay. So these won't relate specifically to a power type, which works well for kind of the flow. Yeah, like temperature, high heat. Yeah, these are the mini bosses currently. I think for the bosses, it's gonna be relatively easy to kind of like dig down, because it's just like really amping up what their power type is about and the style of the islands, which we kind of have a lot of that steampunk feel and kind of like ancient feeling, arcane, and blends between the two. So for this is more of a we're still not 100% sure what these characters are. So I think this will, Charlie, can you not get out of here? There we go. She's just trying to lay on my keyboard as she does. So yeah, okay, let's write down some quick ideas. So we have like wind, air, frost, heat, solar. Solar's an interesting one, I like that. Heat wave, cold snap. Ultraviolet. And this is also kind of in the area where the clouds are forming. So it's pretty high altitude. Mirage, tornadoes, oh, cyclone. Oh yeah, fog is a good one. I like that. Because that doesn't feel like it has to be a power type, but it's kind of like, you know, interfering with your flight path or something like that while you're floating around up in the sky. Blizzard. Lightning is pretty cool, but like, oh, ball lightning. But yeah, because of the Fulmina and the Machu Picchu, I kind of want to avoid storm stuff specifically. Blizzard. Mirage. Flood. Okay. Sunray. Or like sunbeam. Hail, yeah. Even like just like atmospheric pressure, although that one's less kind of like intimidating sounding. Yeah, pressure doesn't kind of like sound like anything weather related. It's just more like forecast. So I added that one. I'll get rid of it. Humidity, yeah. Because like, imagine if you're trying to fly around in your vessel and it gets too humid, that can mess you up. The calm before the storm, the eye of the storm. Magnetism is a weather element, that's true. I don't know if that'll be as obvious or expressed as easily for the kind of thematics, but I'll add it because it's an interesting idea. Typhoon. Yeah, auroras would be an interesting thing to add in somehow, but yeah, not necessarily fitting the warden kind of idea, I think. Ice, just, yeah, high altitude ice. Shooting star, oh, that's a neat idea. I like that. Or meteor shower. Yeah, cloud types like what is it? Columbus? That's not it. It's something close to that. Yeah, shooting stars aren't really weather, but it is kind of like sky related, so I feel like that could work somehow. I like the idea, not necessarily for this specific thing, but I think I might kind of tuck that away for somewhere. Cumulus. That makes more sense. Cumulus clouds. I used to know a whole bunch of them. I was kind of a nerd about it, and now I don't remember any of it. I think I like shoved that information out of the way so I could learn how to sourdough bread and pull hand noodles. Smog? Oh. Cirrus clouds. Are those the kind of like whipped up ones? Or are those the super high altitude or low? I don't know. I don't remember them anymore. Jet stream? I don't know if that one works as well, because that's more of a man-made kind of element. Turbulence. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because it is almost like, so the idea is you're kind of navigating the skies, you're flying around to these islands, you're exploring them, And these mice, these wardens of the sky, are messing with you and preventing you from exploring properly and like finding high altitude boss regions, stuff like that. So you have to take out each of these wardens to kind of access them. Just the light gameplay idea on this. This is we've been playing it like this and it's going well, but again, not locked in on any specifics, but that's kind of the concept behind these. So turbulence is an interesting idea because it kind of messes with your flying and oh, the turbulent, like that mouse is causing way too much turbulence in the sky. They're keeping you from exploring further, kind of feeling. Yeah, got another one for pressure. Different oxygen levels. Yeah. Or like atmosphere, low atmosphere. Well. How do you like my really bad writing? My chicken scratch. Bird strike. Bird strike. Monsoon. Tsunami. Yeah, bring your sunken city O2 to breathe. I like it. Yeah, this calls for a Wikipedia / thesaurus. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, I did actually like search just weather-related kind of like websites that just have terminology, and I found so many ridiculous ones that, yeah, just all those barometrics. Oh, okay. Yeah, you right. Jet streams separate low and high pressure. Yeah, so, okay. Solar flare. Wait, did I write that one? No, sunbeam. There. Yeah, that would be a bit rough if this mouse is just constantly causing solar flares. Could be pretty bad. Gale. Ooh. Gale is a neat one because it kind of has, you know, a name of a character to it, but then it's obviously kind of like powerful winds that are just buffeting your vessel. So dew. I like it. It feels very kind of like soft and innocent though, less threatening, but definitely a good kind of option. Nimbus, yeah. Nimbus is good too because it kind of like gives a feeling of kind of like, oh, maybe this is a nimble, fast character, but also it's related to clouds specifically, and they can maybe shape them or something cool like that. Polar vortex, ozone, yeah. So many options to work with. Sunstrike. Anything with strike in it is just awesome. And then Tempest, Monsoon. Yeah, there's so many. Okay. A mesocycle. You know, everybody knows what a mesocycle is. Meso, thunder strike, dew strike. There we go. Dew strike. Atlas, Ridge. Okay. I think we're starting to get reaching. Remember, we only need 4 of them. And this is, again, still just the concepting phase, but fantastic input. Loving every single thing you guys have added. Yeah, Maelstrom is a good one. Plot twist, a rift opens in the sky. I like it. I'm going to just take this here and save that for later. Thanks, Brian. So, let's see. I'm feeling a few of these. A lot of good ones. Hail is kind of like, also trying to think of the name that it could have is like Warden of Hail or Warden of Fog. Cold Snap is like just a cool name. Smog is kind of interesting. I think Gale is good too because it like that powerful wind. It doesn't feel like Mosu Pichu. It doesn't feel like a specific power type, but it is definitely something that you would have to be weary of if you're traveling in high altitudes, is gale winds. Yeah, Lady Cold Snap does exist. That's a good point. You know what? Just because of that, I'm gonna take the underline off of that. Just so that we don't have those overlaps that can confuse people. Yeah, maybe that's why I was like, oh, that's a great name, because it's familiar. Frost, Warden of Frost, Warden of Ice. And it might not be Warden of, that's just kind of like our in-house idea. Nimbus could be interesting. It might, because a lot of the hydro mice that we've drawn have kind of these cloud-related aspects. Although it's kind of hard not to kind of go in that route when you're high in the sky and you have the hydro power type to work with. Yeah, so Nimbus could be good though. Feels powerful, that's a good strong name. Hailstorm. Hailstorm. I'll clean that up a bit. I like it, but I think just trying to keep it clean and crisp. Just there's more kind of angles we could take. And then, you know what, here's another thing, is every time I we create something and we have kind of like, here's a placeholder idea for the name. Once it goes up to be uploaded and they kind of write some descriptions, they'll generally kind of like come up with an even better name that suits kind of like the whole area and context together with its kind of description. So I'm not too worried about the name specifically, but more the concept. So I think like wind is a good one. It feels like that's something you would have to be worried about if you're navigating the high altitudes. So like gale is good for that. Typhoon, whatnot. So I think wind is a concept that we'll use. Cold is obviously also something that I think can really mess with your flight and navigation. If it gets too cold, that changes the air pressure, that could freeze your propeller or your balloon or whatever, and just create hail or whatever. So I think cold of some kind, be it ice, frost, cold snap, blizzard, hail. I think that's kind of pretty relevant. So these both feel like they need to almost be a concept there. And I think cloud itself could work, something along those lines. And it's in a sense like these two combine, I guess, but like nimbus or fog, because they kind of like, they'll reduce your visibility. There could be stuff lurking in the clouds, and if they were to turn into storm clouds, flying through them is dangerous. That sort of stuff. So like visibility in a way, or I guess it could create turbulence. Yeah, gusts. That's another one. Gale and gusts. I mean, maybe there are a few mice that are kind of similar, but they work together. Gale and gusts, the duo of the skies. Oh yeah. So okay, yeah, clouds, sheep-shaped clouds raining sheep. I like it. There is actually a character that we've created in the Hydro group that actually sculpts clouds, and the concept name. Sorry, the placeholder name is the Cloud Sculptor, I believe. So I think Cloud Strife. needs to be one of the characters in the game with his really big Buster sword. I think is very important. Just get rid of that real quick. But yeah, so clouds of some kind. And then, of course, you need to arm your Sephiroth trap to take out Mr. Strife. Okay, but yeah, clouds could be something. So we have like fog, nimbus, cirrus, cumulus. I like it. Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's see. That's a good one. Need one more. Turbulence is interesting. But I wonder if that is kind of like wind? Because I guess it's just like different pressure fronts where they kind of like are, I guess, the jet stream, where they kind of like start to roll through each other because there's kind of like a high pressure and a low pressure wave that are kind of like sliding across each other, and when you fly at the point where they're starting to kind of like blend, that's probably where your turbulence is kind of kicking your butt. At least that's how I understand it. I might be totally wrong on that. That's just, you know, what my brain says it is, with no actual reasoning behind it other than it makes Jacob sense. The sun one, yeah, that's an interesting idea too. Solar is kind of cool. It creates heat, which is important for the weather fronts. That one's a concept that we hadn't really kind of like looked into when we were kind of like discussing what these could be with the group, like the devs. Cyclone could also work. I feel like maybe wind can be this cyclone kind of character, and maybe it's like you know, the actual drawing of it kind of has, you know, some kind of like cyclones kind of peeling off the sides of it, and it's just blasting wind out like crazy. Coriolis force. What's the Coriolis force? Is that where the different pressure fronts are kind of like sliding around each other? Am I way off? Probably way off. Yeah, solar flares does definitely have some cool phenomena. Northern Lights would be really, really neat. We did draw that in one of the headers for the Carl's Cruise, or was it one of the Great Winter Hunt? Maybe we've done it a few times. I feel like I've done it once or twice. Reverse of swirling stuff in the different hemispheres. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. That's the one. Thanks to the planet spinning with a loose atmosphere and different temperatures. I thought it was something to do with the like atmosphere kind of swirling. Yeah, so you have like kind of the planet rotating, and then on one side it's kind of going one way and then the other way. And I think it like, does it reverse at a certain point? Because it's like moving faster and then a bit slower and slowest, or maybe the other way around. Yeah. Look to science, not to me. Yeah. This is definitely going to be a different Feedback Friday session. But this is kind of like what I do on my own when I'm kind of like really loosely trying to figure out kind of concepts. You know, I'll just write down tons of ideas. It'll help kind of like me to kind of shape something together. Um, I think like these four are pretty decent, and I think like wind is definitely good. Like we need wind stuff, so that's a yeah. Cold, yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's like a yeah. I think we'll have something like that. And then clouds, it's like, yeah, the hydro mice do a lot of the cloud stuff already, so it might feel a little too hydro power type because of the characters we've already created for the hydro group. So this one's kind of like a meh, maybe. Solar as well. I actually like it. I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's just kind of on that like not totally sure because that kind of direction hasn't really been discussed in the team. So we'll kind of like leave that one as a possibility. I think it's a good one. And I think clouds works if it's more about kind of like the fog and like the visibility aspect as opposed to kind of like, I don't know, the hydro stuff that we've created already. But either way, I think we have these two that we can start with. So I'm going to just shrink that into the corner so we have it to draw from when we need. And let's just start kind of like figuring out what the wind or cold mouse could be like. And so let me actually pull up. So this is my handy dandy tool that I use for my references. And this is because it lets me place kind of like images without, didn't mean to move all these, without having to open it as like its own Photoshop document. This can sit on top. So here's kind of like early concepts that we did. Or sorry, Lauren did these, and these are power type specific mice. So they all kind of have these kinds of brass and teal-ish gems, and then depending on what power type it is, so like Forgotten, the garb style is different. So like, as you probably are familiar with, because we've kind of like gone through this a few times in different Feedback Friday sessions. Yeah, today's Friday. I know. The only reason I know what day it is like because of, you know, having to do Feedback Friday or like doing Zoom calls with my family on Sundays and stuff like that. But yeah, so like physical, lots of fur trim, simple but like brutish, kind of barbaric. But then they still have these kinds of fancy metals sculpted for them. Shadow are the kind of like dark and hidden, very magical. Tactical are very much kind of like flight and exploration and crafting. So they're the heaviest of the steampunk group. This was one that we did a while back. The Law. These characters steal the tech from the tactical group and repurpose it for their own nefarious means. So I think what we'll try and do, and this is me just hoping, is adapt the, what's her name? The gang boss mouse that we created forever ago to become a Law character. So I might try to, either she'll be like a really high tier for the Law group, or she might even become the boss because the mini boss, it wouldn't work. She doesn't fit that kind of weather aspect. I guess I could have blown this up so it's easier for you guys to see when I'm showing it instead of the tiny little version of it. So these are just kind of like early concepts. We definitely have a lot of completed characters, but I think I'll save those for you guys to actually discover, because these actually do a pretty good job of showing kind of like the direction. But basically one of the things is the power type island characters have these brass, the gems, and the like specific garb. So I think for the wardens, I want to go almost an opposite direction. So I want to avoid these elements to make sure it stands away from the island characters, so that when you encounter one, you're like, this is a different character. It doesn't belong to that group. So these are also very kind of like, I don't know, like they feel like they live in a group. They all kind of like wear similar clothing and do similar things to the other mice in their group. What if maybe the wardens are a little more a force of nature, less a kind of like a part of that community or something like that? Yeah, I want to make her the boss. I think I might need to tweak her a bit, which is fine. You know, it's an older piece. But yeah, I think, and I'll probably add steampunk, right, to make it fit the area, because she really has to, if she's a boss, it's got to be like real deep into it. But I think that would be fun. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna bring the gang boss as the boss for the law group. I think. I don't know how I'll make it fit, but let's do it. Yeah, wardens could be elementals. I like the feeling of them being more a force of nature as opposed to like, yeah, part of kind of like a tribe or a community of mice. So like, force of nature, elemental. I'm gonna just merge that. Okay, yeah, so that's just that one layer. Let's turn that gray. Okay, so, yeah, Gauntlet tier 5, elemental mouse. You know, I don't always know, but I think was tier 5 just in general weak to shadow. Okay, well, let's see. By the way, so there are 8 power types to this area. Basically, all of the main ones except Rift. And it is going to be the highest ranked area we've come out with. It's going to be massive, and it's going to have a lot for you to do. But it's also going to be expecting from you as a player. It's kind of going to expect you to be kind of like pretty potent, pretty powerful hunter at that point. So, you know, if you're kind of like low on one of the traps, like you don't have kind of, you know, top, not like top tier required, I wouldn't say, but you'll probably notice if you don't have kind of like some really good hunting equipment for each of the power types. So just putting that idea out there, that if you maybe are a bit lacking on a power type, you do have time right now, because I mean the area is still in development. It's going to be for a while. There's a lot for us to do, but it's something to consider. Is you know, really kind of making sure you kind of have the range covered, because we're definitely going to be, you know, challenging our player base, and I think it'll be pretty cool and fun. That said, it is designed in a way that, like, yes, if you do not have the best in slot, especially since some of them are like ridiculous to get, you will definitely be able to keep going and do it. But, you know, I think you'll feel kind of like rewarded for putting in the effort of kind of like going after the power types that you might be lacking in. At least that's kind of the desire I have for how the area feels. and that's kind of what I'm kind of pushing towards. Not punishing gameplay at all, but certainly kind of like making your awesome trap kind of roster feel like it was worth getting. I just like erased that head to draw a new one, and I put it in an even worse spot. How do I do that? Yeah, there's definitely like some power types that are pretty old and neglected as well. So trying to kind of like, because I think, what is it, Shadow, and maybe Law. Like Law isn't as neglected, but it's a younger one, so we didn't kind of get that power tier up as high. So we might need to kind of like shift how we kind of utilize those. There could be potentially like intro traps for those power types, maybe just to bump them up. But at the same time, I think we're just going to try and balance it to really use what ones exist that you can kind of have ready. Okay. So just really, like, you know what? I'm actually going to do something I don't do enough, and use kind of like a darker background, because one of the things you can get out of concept sketching on a darker background, I might even go darker than that, is things aren't as crisp and clear as high contrast of the kind of like black and white sketching, because it's a little fuzzier in a way, you know, it's not as sharp and defined. You can kind of like pick out ideas and kind of like see things a little bit easier while you're kind of like scribbling messily. Why is this erasing? Oh, right. So it can kind of help, because it allows you to just really just loose scribble around, and you can kind of, you know, hopefully see something a little more without having to define it out. I don't know, kind of like cloud watching, you know, people who kind of like look at clouds and then can see, you know, designs and shapes in them, because they're kind of just, you know, fuzzy and just vaguely those shapes, and kind of like sketching on a mid kind of grayish color, something a bit darker, scribbling around. You can kind of do the same thing. So, you know, this kind of development is cloud watching, if you will. So just really as sloppily as I can, just trying to kind of create some kind of gesture that might be interesting, feels a little more raw and kind of like wild, I guess, because I think that's one of the feelings that this group, the Wardens, might need, is to kind of like have less of a kind of like, I guess, civilized feeling, where they don't kind of like they're just more wild entities, as opposed to kind of like living their lives. They're a force of nature. They just are. Now, that said, they'll probably have cool like outfit and design, but so let's say we're going for, what do you think, cold or wind right now? Hmm. Yeah, maybe there'll be a 1 in a million chance to find the parental floating island. And there's just one mouse that you can't get anywhere else there. Just to make it the worst experience ever. You get one hunt and you need the nanny bot. We would never do that. As far as I'm concerned, that does not exist. All right, so yeah, wind. Let's go for wind right now. Let's see if we can make this a wind character. And yeah, we don't want it to be Mosu Picchu. It does come from, at least currently, the concept is that you travel from Mosu Picchu to this region. So they'll be closely tied together. But again, yeah, I think that we want to make sure the theming, they have their own kind of like place. So if we're doing wind, kind of want to have it be more light on its feet. And then this also creates a kind of triangle shape right now, which, you know, kind of works for tornadoes, right? You kind of have that kind of like cone, the funnel kind of coming down to a point. Top heavy feels like could be blown over with wind. What else? And then of course we also want it to feel like it can float. You know, if it is the aspect of wind, you know, it needs to be light and kind of like wispy. But at the same time very strong, extremely powerful, right? So let's see, maybe if I move this hand out to kind of like make it kind of like, I can't show you, I'm gesturing at my camera, which refuses to obey. Actually, let me just copy this first so I don't regret erasing it. Thinking maybe, okay, so we'll keep this kind of triangle form. What if the arms are kind of like pushing forward? Like it's kind of shoving the air at you with the gesture it's created. Might be hard to convey. And especially hard to see in such a scribbly sketch. But it's kind of like got its arms, almost like it's pushing an invisible ball of air at you, maybe. So let's bring this elbow up, forward. Trying to get that hand at this angle is tough. Not the best at them. switch to my pen tool. Okay, maybe if I rotate this a bit. Yeah, and honestly, I think for these, they'll actually probably be the horizontal layout, just because they're kind of like, you know, mini bosses. Okay. I kind of want it to like have that cyclone feeling to it somehow. And maybe it's like clouds ripping around it in a spiral or something like that. The tail could also be swirling around. Yeah, just like extremely powerful wind looking thing. Okay, let's actually flip this horizontally as well. Since, yeah, I'm pretty confident that this set we're going to want to do the landscape because they're kind of special like that. Alright. Will floating islands be the final area? No. We definitely have plenty of other areas we have in mind. And truth be told, I don't think there will ever be a final area. This is one of those projects where we just want to keep adding to it and working on it until, you know, there's no players left. So, yeah. It's certainly going to be a big deal, this area, and it will remain that way for quite some time. But yeah, there's definitely going to be more after this, for sure. For sure. Yeah, exactly. Dracano originally was the final area of MouseHunt. That's a good point. That is exactly how it was designed, was kind of like the end game. And then we're like, oh, you know, we should probably keep making stuff because people like it. So we just kept adding. And that area is, you know, quite old. And they've been a lot better since then. So, you know, hopefully the same for this. Hopefully we'll like be able to kind of like look back and be like, man, I'm glad we made so much cooler stuff than the floating islands, even though that was pretty rad. So I almost wonder if these characters should be made out of the weather phenomena somehow. So making this character out of wind might be a bit difficult, but I think that could be especially helpful for that feeling of kind of like making it feel like a force of nature, an elemental, as opposed to, a character living on an island. I think we can do that somehow. Like, we've definitely done other aspects, like water and stuff. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Let's see. Got a little early Larry link since we're not going to be doing lunch and returning to the stream. Basically, I'm going to take lunch at 2 o'clock, which is an hour later than I usually do. Basically, we're just going to go until... Ooh, come on, why didn't that? Until I have to do lunch and then have a meeting after. I'm not in my MouseHunt account, but here is a Larry link. So do enjoy that. I know I will. That's awesome, Marco. Yeah, a lot of people that I've met have been playing for like up to a decade. Quite a few have been playing like for the full 12 years, which is amazing and incredible. And I'm always so honored to meet players that have been around since basically the beginning, which is just wild to think about, like absolutely wild. Okay, so will there be new traps? Yeah, this area is definitely going to have new traps, but they're going to, and again, maybe take this with a grain of salt because still under development. We have not discussed specifics on the traps, but one of the things I think we're pretty, I think the direction will be that we want the structure of creating the traps to be more tied to kind of like your effort put in, as opposed to kind of like big random chance, like the rib drop is like a super rare, tough, and so I don't think we're going to do that for traps. But there might be kind of like some collectible type things that people will want, but won't be kind of like related to your gameplay. More, well, I don't want to spoil it, but like it'll be exciting and fun to collect, and you'll have reasons to want to do it, but it certainly won't feel like like trying to get a rib after 80 runs and not being able to do it. So the very awesome new kind of like top tier weapons that this area would have would be much more kind of like, hey, you put in the effort, here you go, you earned it. And also the design for it is very much like every single run that you do, you're able to kind of like see where your progress is, what you've accomplished on that run, and kind of like, it'll be pretty clear, I hope, for the player to kind of like have a good sense of where they are. I think we've taken lots of lessons from older areas that we've produced and kind of figured out what works, what we can improve on, and kind of like the flow and what the player is kind of like actively doing and passively doing to kind of like really make that MouseHunt experience work. So I'm honestly pretty excited about what this whole area is. I think a lot of people are gonna find things in it that work quite well for them. So yeah, there's just like a whole lot of effort in the design of this, and we really kind of like have been just trying to like really figure it out. And the amazing thing is like everyone on the team is like, this is amazing, this is like just right, like everything feels like it's snapping together how it needs to, which is just amazing, especially after the Valor Rift. That one, there was a lot of kind of like challenge when we were developing it. Like the idea wasn't quite clear and didn't mesh the whole time, so there was a lot of kind of like difficulty in actually kind of like building it, and we had to like change a lot, you know, pretty last minute, which ended up kind of like introducing some errors and stuff in the design, and we had to kind of fix those. So there was kind of like, you know, balance patches, which, you know, there always is the potential of that, but kind of like a lot more than we really kind of like wanted it to have. So yeah, I honestly just really excited about what this area is, what you get to do in it. I think people are going to have a lot of fun, and it's like there's lots of potential for interesting strategy, but also at the same time no requirement to really kind of like dig deep into it. But if you want to, like, there's some layers, but it's all very kind of like presentable and kind of like, you know, intuitive, I believe. Like once you've kind of done some run in the area, you kind of get it. Or at least that's the hope. All right. Yeah, I really want to just be like, here, play the prototype. Tell me what you think. But we're not at that stage yet. Maybe we'll do that with our long tail testers in the near future. I want to get the players' input on this at some point soon. But at the same time, I don't want it to kind of like be too early to kind of, you know, spoil too much. But yeah, like testing this stuff early on is important. But that said, like internally, we're all really on the same page for this, so that's just the best. And like people kind of like sharing ideas on what they think it could have and where it could go. Like lots of really good kind of like directions it's gone in, lots of interesting developments and changes, and everyone's basically always been like, this makes sense, I like this. So yeah, super stoked basically is what I'm saying. I think it's going to be really cool. This, maybe the ear is messing me up because I want to move that arm down, I think. But I don't want that tangent. I don't know. Maybe I've worked on this kind of like pose for too long already. I don't want to kind of like get too caught up in one sketch, considering this is supposed to be just like loose concepting of what these characters could possibly be. But honestly, I feel like you guys have helped me really kind of figure out more about what these characters are. Like, I like the idea of them being more of a kind of force of nature, and that alone helps differentiate them from the other group, which is basically the main question I had, is like, well, why would this mouse show up on the physical power type island, and then the next run you do, maybe it's in the arcane, you know, and trying to like understand how they stand out and why. So I feel like that could make sense. Has everyone been blowing out the birthday candles when it's time to get your birthday supery, your anniversary, your MouseHunt birthday? There's Was it only the 10th year that we gave that out actually, or do we just have that as this like a thing that players have? It might have only been the 10th year. Yeah, it is Ellie. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, free Super Brie. All right. Nice little token of being around for our 10th anniversary. Never say no to free Super Brie, huh? All right. Year 1. Nice. Yeah, I guess if you didn't get that item during the 10th anniversary, you won't have it. So hopefully you did. So one of the things that I think might look good for a character like this is trying to create these like pressure orbs, the vacuums, the Avatar, The Last Airbender, kind of like blasts of air, that kind of feeling. Now how to do that in a sketch is a challenge, but I think it can be accomplished by just kind of like having some stuff erased in a kind of ball-like shape, perhaps. Just kind of like a visual energy, ripples of kind of wind or something. Just like that is a thing that happens, is the air will actually distort light depending on kind of its pressure. So this actually would make sense as a thing, like a visual phenomenon. But instead of it just kind of whiting out areas, it would actually probably just kind of zigzag areas, right? So I could use kind of like a liquify tool on the sketch to kind of represent that better. But that's kind of the concept, is it's distorting the light in these kinds of ripply shapes. And that actually isn't a bad way to show that feeling of kind of like blasts or gusts of wind. Yeah, I think that actually works pretty well. Okay. Yeah, there would be lots of kind of eddies and currents kind of peeling off of this character. I don't know if I would want to show them quite like that, but that would probably be, something that would kind of come about somehow. It's the Warden of Torrents. Warden of Wind. Gusts. Whatever we would call it. And I don't know, maybe do we do something special with their faces so they all kind of like have their own thing that they share with each other, maybe? Like instead of kind of like a basic mouse face, what if it was like, I don't know, like something more interesting, like a mask, or I don't know what I would do for that, but it's not quite right. I kind of want to make them feel, different somehow. Let's see. Glowing eyes, avatar state. Yeah. Mouse skull, and there's 4 of them. Oops, what have I done? Just make it riding a horse. Yeah, flowing hair made of wind is a good idea. I like that. Make it very kind of clumpy, noodly hair as well for massive style points. I don't do enough hair on mice, and I feel like these mice would be very old, and I feel like it'd be kind of cool to give them hair. A few of the mice actually already for this area that we're working on have hair. Yeah, I actually enjoy it, and I don't think we do it enough. It's not always appropriate for the style of the character, but yeah, I don't know, like a symbol for the face seems kind of interesting and unique, but I don't know how I would do that yet. Something to concept out though. But like, there was just like a symbol of wind or something like that. No, it's not that yet, but ooh, a third eye is kind of a cool way to do that. I like that. Yeah, that actually kind of feels like they're like a whole other plane of mouse. So that might be the way to kind of make that feel otherworldly, more kind of. Need to change the face a little, the orientation of it, maybe bring it forward a bit more. But yeah, I think that might actually be enough. It's like giving it a third eye. It's kind of cool. And like, I don't want to have to make them all feel like super epic kind of thing, but like, I feel like something like that, like the third eye, could actually allow us to do like a really cutesy one, but then still make it feel like it's just a whole other tier of mouse. So that's an interesting idea. I'm definitely going to try it out. I don't know if we'll actually end up going for that. You know, it kind of depends on if the rest of the team is like, I don't get it, or they're like, oh, that totally is a great idea. That works awesome. So we'll see. Again, we're only kind of like doing some concept sketches today, because I'll be finishing up the stream in less than 2 hours. Although I feel like we're making some good kind of headway on this. I'm feeling happy with this. I think maybe the hair again, like elements about this are made out of its aspect. So like the hair itself isn't, you know, just loose flowing hair. It could be just kind of ripples of wind and cloud or something like that. Just like steam pouring off of the face and kind of swirling away. Actually, yeah, this this would have, like, this character specifically would have kind of curly hair, right? Because it's just, you know, even if you walk out in gusty wind with straight hair, it's going to get whipped around and, you know, curled up and tied in knots, you know. So that's this mouse's fault. Also good at generating power with wind turbines. Who knew? Thanks, mouse. You ever see that commercial? It's a bit older, but it was for like a power company that does wind turbines, and it's this kind of guy who he's invisible, and he's just going around messing with people, like shoving newspapers in people's face or stealing their hats or like knocking things over and just kind of like slapping shutters and stuff like that. It's a good one. I don't remember what it's called, but it's really funny. I like it a lot. How long do I take to do a full in-game worthy art piece? It usually is 1 to 2 days. Depending on what the design is, it can take up to 3 days for a character. A character like this, I might do the 3 days. Depends on how smoothly it comes together, but usually day one is kind of the first half of the day is kind of figuring out the sketch and kind of trying to resolve details like that. And then it'll be blocking in the silhouettes, trying to resolve kind of like the actual shape language and doing kind of like a quick pass of the actual kind of the actual tones and colors. And then the next day it's kind of just continuing to render and detail out things, tweaks, stuff like that. But it's a little push and pull here and there. I think I've created mice in 3 hours before. Sometimes they just come together, and it's not even necessarily like a super simple character necessarily. Sometimes they just flow. I think the hard-boiled mouse was one that I did live on stream in only a few hours. But then, yeah, like some mice just are a struggle, and you know, you sketch it out, and it's going, yeah, all right. You got to do something, so you kind of just push it, and then, oh, I don't know, maybe that's not quite it. Back to the drawing board, and so, you know, it can be a challenge sometimes to kind of get it done in timely manner. And then also sometimes I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and so I kind of, you know, will render something for a very long time, because honestly I quite enjoy rendering. It's fascinating to me to kind of like figure out what light does on specific surfaces and how it interacts, and so I enjoy that stage. But usually it goes pretty smoothly. It's just I can kind of get lost in it and just kind of like render and render and render. But yeah, I mean, it's usually, I would say nowadays, with the level of detail we do, I would say it's 2 days for a mouse, because we've been putting a lot of design and detail into the characters over the past few years. So unless it's like a really simple mouse, usually around 2 days. And then like other things, like we have to do HUDs and items, traps and trap skins, charms, those kinds of things. Those are usually between 3 hours and 1 day. Traps can take 2 days. Trap skins can sometimes be 2 days, even more, depending on kind of like how complex the trap is, or if it was really challenging to kind of lock down on the idea. But items are almost always just half a day, pretty quick. cheese can be like half a day to a day, usually half a day, maybe like 3 hours. Yeah, I mean it's super dependent on how much detail is needed, stuff like that. Outer space mice soon, you know we want to go there, right? Like, one of the reasons, like, here's the thing, Lauren and I are like, yeah, we gotta go to space. Space is not the final frontier, but we gotta go there. It'll be awesome. And you know, when we've talked about it years ago, we're like, well, we don't want to just like jump into space immediately. Like, we want to have a bit of a flow to that, just because, you know, it's a journey. It's a lot to do, and space is a big deal, so we don't want to just dive in necessarily. And so I was pushing for going kind of like midway, you know, floating up into the sky, but not necessarily in space. And that's kind of one of the reasons why floating islands, also just, it's a really cool concept, and we've wanted to do it for many years now. But that's kind of a thing, you know. So now that we're doing floating islands, I could see us starting to kind of think about how to get mouse hunters into space if we want. How many artists are there? Currently there are 3 in-house mouse hunt artists. There's me, Lauren, Maxine. And I've been part of MouseHunt since the very beginning. I actually created kind of the look and feel of the game, even though it's real bad from back then. I wouldn't, you know, show that off to people, but it's in the game, it exists, so everyone's seen it. But yeah, I've been a part of the project for over 12 years. And basically I get to do crazy mice every day. Or, you know, concepting areas. I'm doing more of that. I'm doing a lot of kind of game design stuff these days, which I'm really passionate about. A lot of the floating islands gameplay I've been developing over the past few years. And so I'm especially excited about kind of what we're doing with it, because it's kind of really going places that I feel like the game will enjoy. And you know, I've definitely had my hands in all the areas, various to various levels. So I think we're all really involved and really excited about this new area. So it's a lot to be excited about for you guys. As always, you know, making sure that the player is the focus of kind of like why we're creating it the way we are, you know, to make it just a really engaging and interesting experience. But at the same time, kind of like keeping true to what makes MouseHunt great, which I think is kind of like that ability to just like be kind of, you know, playing it at your own pace, and just kind of like, you know, setting your trap, setting up kind of like your run, and then kind of like keeping an eye on it as you go. But you don't need to like, you know, jump in every hour and change things. It's kind of the way this hopefully is gonna run. It's more of a kind of like you kind of like front load your runs. You kind of, you know, you set up, you farm up what you need, you prepare for a run, and then you kind of like figure, like you decide your run, and there's actually a lot of weight behind that and a lot of interesting choice to make there. So I'm excited for you guys to see what that all means. But it's kind of more of a like do that work at the very beginning, and then, you know, run the gauntlet of hunts, not specifically the gauntlet, but you know, you do your hunts and you can kind of watch what's happening and kind of like see your progression, but you're not required to kind of like constantly jump in and change your cheese and change this and change that. There can be a little bit of that depending on the run that you choose, but yeah, for the most part, it's kind of like mouse hunt, passive hunting, but like lots to get out of it and lots to kind of enjoy about it. Lots of potential to farm for resources, but it's also not like Grindfest 2008 or whatever. Every run you'll make marked progression as well. Yeah, so I feel like the aspect of wind would really appreciate having a ponytail if they had this much hair, because otherwise their hair would just be like everywhere, just they can't see anything. So yeah, just have that tied up real nice and sturdy. Like that's going to be a really solid hairband to hold the hair in that crazy wind that they generate, even if it is hair made of wind. Yeah, windy sideburns just feels right for this character, doesn't it? I don't know why, but I'm just like, yeah, they gotta have nice big bushy sideburns. Some things in art it just happens because it's right. You don't even have to think about it. You just do. This eye feels a little wonky. I'm probably gonna give this a flip, but I haven't done that yet, and that always reveals challenges in my drawings where I'm like, ah, that's why it looked off. It's always so useful for that. So let's do that now before I just keep rambling. So yeah, that eye I think just needs to be rotated a bit out. Feels like it's kind of coming in. So if I do this, hide that, drop it down, bring it out a bit. Yeah, I think the sideburn can actually be tucked away behind the eye a little more. That doesn't feel bad. I think the ears are a little off. Maybe this left ear now, it needs to kind of slide out. Ooh, I gotta confirm that. So maybe if this comes out to here more so, because I totally changed the direction of the head without really tweaking the ears when I needed to. So let me just... So I have this like little keyboard that I use for gaming and stuff. It's kind of like just a bundle of hotkeys, and its own little kind of keyboard thing that I have off on the side. But it's also Charlie's favorite thing to lay on, and I used to have it where it just had like macros and stuff bound to specific keys. So if she managed to like lay on that key, it would just like hit a pile of keys. So I actually had to like set up default profiles for it so that it's just no keys do anything, because I just cannot keep her off of the keyboard, period. Like every day. And it's not a problem normally because I'm usually at the office, and she doesn't seem to care about being on my desk at night so much. But like every single day she just flops down on that keyboard now. So it's just a struggle. So yeah, I had to like set up a profile that just disabled literally every key on it so that she can just lay on it. And then I don't need to constantly pick her up and move her. I just can't do that. She's too cute. So I feel a little better about the ear placement. I think this eye needs to kind of shift to the middle more now. And that forehead is going to slope down a bit more. Yeah, like here. Make the hair come off that edge. Again, like I feel like there's a lot to improve on that sketch. Like I'm feeling like that eye is still real wonky. But I don't need to necessarily worry so hard at this stage because I'm not necessarily even using this image, but at the same time I'm liking this enough that I am continuing to work on this render. Normally during concepting, I'll kind of like stop before this point and just try new directions. But you know, I didn't really have a strong plan at all for this. I wasn't even sure if I was going to work on the wardens today, to be honest. But I don't know, there's something that I think might be here in this sketch. So I'm just happy enough to explore. Do I want this eye to feel less kind of like juicy, real eyeball? Or do we want it to kind of look like an actual real eyeball from this character? Right now it's a lot smaller, a lot rounder. Should it be the same size? What are we thinking? I feel like it would also have kind of like potentially a beard. But that would definitely be getting kind of carried away in the wind. Maybe. I don't know if we want the beard. Yeah. Rasengan. Yeah, the beard kind of steals the sideburns, huh? I think the beard is interesting, but I actually like the different kind of like feeling it gives without the beard. TBH. There's just more of this kind of upward motion with it too. The beard kind of pulls you down across it, which isn't inappropriate for wind, but you know, this kind of like the hair volume, it just kind of gives again more of this like triangle going up, which I think wind, we want it to kind of feel boom, boom, you know, it's just kind of pushing up and out. It's rising and blasting, kind of, you know, that kind of energy to it, right? Actually, that's another thing is maybe these are kind of like pulling in, but in a spiral. So that kind of helps that cyclone feel. So I'll just leave these kind of shapes as a quick idea of, you know, if there's some environmental aspect to this drawing, just kind of like clouds or wisps of fog or something to help show the air circulation. It'll have these kinds of motion vectors to it. I'll probably keep it from interfering with these energy blasts that it's kind of producing from its hands. Yeah, that feels all right. I just want it to feel like it's kind of swirling in a direction. Let's raise that up a bit so that we can kind of get that angle. And this just is like becoming a tighter and tighter and tighter knot. Cool. Flowing sideburns could work. At least just like, just a little bit more. Maybe. Actually, I kind of like that. Maybe they would have it braided or something to kind of keep it more manageable there. That's kind of a little something extra, and maybe we give it some kind of decoration tied to it. Although I might hesitate on that, just because I feel like anything that might bring it to the island mice could play against what we need. I'll leave that in the sketch, but I might just get rid of that element of it. We'll see, we'll see. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna try braiding that just to see. I feel like that is an interesting potential for it. Okay. So that would be over, under. Yeah, I don't know. The braid element actually kind of plays against that wildness, that unrestrained force of nature feeling. So I think I actually am gonna return to the more wild sideburn feeling. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of taking away from that raw element. Like just that big hair tie, I feel like can work. But I don't think I have enough history states for that. I'll just do this. Smudge tool. Good old smudge tool is the best eraser. Gotta have a real good smudge tool for it though. But yeah, I just think there's kind of like this wild aspect that it produced that got lost when it was kept up in a nice braid. Yeah. I think I'm glad to return to that. It just feels more the direction that I think this could take. All right. Angrier. Messed up the nose. His face is just not right. Not quite right. Okay. Let me try that eye a little bigger. Maybe moving it up too. Just kind of like trying to think about what would actually do inside of the skull, right? So that's like the full eye, and that's a full eye, and that's a full eye. They're all pretty close together. But I think there's just enough clearance that it could work. Yeah, I think maybe I liked it smaller. We could make it a little angrier. Just kind of furrowing the brow a bit more. It's kind of interesting what would happen with the forehead eyeball, right? Just grr. I think part of that will be resolved in the actual rendering when we can kind of get subtle angles and lighting happening. So let's give this a flip back. Yeah. All right. So this whoosh is interesting. I feel like it cutting under the chin is a useful kind of like composition element. So I'm going to keep that, but I might actually just turn it into the mouse's tail. So it's almost like they just did a really quick, fast spin, and it, you know. Let's see, so if they spin to create this wind, they're spinning counterclockwise real fast, because that's pulling this wind in like that, right? So then that would mean that the base of the tail would be coming from here. That kind of thing. Which is fine. That works. The torso itself, I think, can be kind of like cleaned up a bit. Oh yeah, third eye could be sideways. That might actually make more sense, because if the eyes are working like this, why would this one be like that? It would make more sense if it was also in that orientation. So that makes more sense, actually. Good point. Yeah, biologically speaking, it just, I think it would actually work better this way. Yeah, and that's a better like shape for the flow of it anyways. Can make it feel a little bit more eyeball like, and also looks kind of nice even if it is smaller than the other eyes. If I make this a third, suddenly then we have kind of compositionally a better balance. Because that's kind of a useful thing to do, is use rule of thirds for your shapes. So effectively, you want to have like big, medium, and small, and each of those are kind of like a third of the other. If you want to get real mathematical about it, you could do like 38% of the size too. That's kind of one that I like to use. Or you could blow something up by 1.62% or times. But at any rate, just a third is a nice way to look at it. Because if you're going for like exact thirds, it'd be 33.33, but this is using kind of the golden ratio idea of design. Okay, so his hair is kind of like being pulled by this on the scalp, just kind of deciding where the hairline makes sense, given this eye there. I like this kind of clumpier hair texture for this character. So just big lumps of hair kind of. Yeah, it's more squinted sideways, so it feels angrier. And then again with the furrowed brows, that actually does allow us to kind of do that a little better. So you kind of have this kind of furrowed brow here, and then this as well can kind of So I guess it might even be squintier because it's kind of furrowing from both sides. That's kind of interesting. I don't think we want to go too far with that. Yeah, it's definitely angrier looking. Cool. You know what? Maybe for these warden type characters, instead of having kind of like, you know, oh, these are cool vests or whatever, like I was picturing it in kind of like an Aladdin style vest for whatever reason, which I think actually looks pretty good, but again, it kind of takes it away from that wild aspect feeling that I think we want. Maybe it has like cool runes and stuff, sigils, etc. As it's kind of like torso design, shoulders, that kind of stuff. Makes it feel more magical and, you know, elemental perhaps. +1 to sigils and runes. All right. Also, I'm gonna enjoy having kind of like smears and blurs and stuff to kind of like produce that kind of in movement feeling. Kind of captured a little bit of that of the sketch lines on the tail here. Also, if it were to like have a tool or weapon or something like that, if we wanted to go that route, I feel like giving it like a fan, and those gigantic fans could be kind of a way to do that. I suppose that the gauntlet elemental of wind arrow, I guess maybe its name, something like that, it has one of those. So I feel like runes and sigils on a character like this specifically would be a lot of kind of like swirls, kind of gliding over each other, that kind of thing, all rounded. Something like that could be cool. The Zephyr Mist, that's it. Yeah, alright. Kind of looks like it's slapping itself in the chin with its tail right now. Maybe I don't want it behind the face. Maybe I just lower it overall, so it's not interfering. If I just kind of smush it down here, maybe rotate it a bit. I don't want it going behind the leg, because then it's harder to understand what it is, what the direction is, that kind of thing. So I'll have it kind of end there. Now I think that might be a little more clear. Okay. Can also inform what the torso is doing a little easier with that spot right there. So it's compressed down forward, right? It's doing a crunch. And then that means that the back is kind of opening up. So that's stretched. Gotta pay attention to your squash and stretch, everybody. It does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's a good point. Both good points. I mean, if it did have kind of like the tiles here, the the stone steps of the tower, suddenly it would feel like it belongs inside the gauntlet. But yeah, that's done and past art-wise, so. Hopefully it doesn't feel like it is too another area, like some people are mentioning, feels kind of dojo-like. Feels kind of like the gauntlet with the elemental element to it. I'm not too worried about that. I don't think it's kind of going to feel out of place like that, where it's like, why is this mouse in this area, not back in Valor Rift? I'm not worried about that. But at the same time, I do want these to feel unique enough that upon seeing it, you're like, yeah, that's one of the Wardens of the Sky. Distinct. Okay. I think we'll manage, though. Especially with, like with some interesting elements, like maybe the runes, the third eye, that kind of stuff. I'm actually gonna make this eye a bit bigger. Just a smidge. That still feels like a third. Okay. Let's see. That's an interesting idea. Since there are 4 Wardens, should 2 have a night background and 1 have a day background, or just white for all? I feel like these ones might benefit from having the environment element to it. For the floating islands characters, we have a little bit of the environment kind of playing in. It's not like a full backdrop, but like for the Hydra ones, there's lots of cloud and stuff like that around them. I think there's some like grass under feet, or at least implied in the shadows of some mice. So I think that it would be good to kind of like give a little bit more environment element to these, especially with me kind of doing some lighting trickery with this kind of wind ripple. It'll benefit from having something to distort in the background. So if there was like a blue sky and clouds that are nice and plump and fluffy, and then like the closer it gets to this, the more kind of ripply it is. It'll be easier to see the wind as something, as opposed to just doing, speed lines to represent it. So I think specifically that would help this character, but also it's not a bad idea for the Warden grouping in total for them to have that cohesive aspect to it, where they each kind of have the backdrop. And then that's just a cool idea of having kind of like different times of day. So instead of maybe like 2 daytime, 2 nighttime, it could be like, dawn, noon, evening, and midnight kind of thing. And so it's kind of like one for each. So, I mean, that's certainly something to try out and run past the team. So, morning, noon, that's a cool idea. So I'll just lock that up here. And again, because there is 4, it's nice to kind of like play off of, the potential of the 4 different versions of this, the 4, kind of stages of the day or whatever. And then I think you get different weather kind of elements depending on the time of day that can kind of be stronger or weaker. So that's kind of, it works. It's interesting. Nice, like a brand. Okay. So we have 1 hour left. We haven't really looked at the glyphs yet, so we could try doing some kind of stuff with that. Maybe we'll just use a clipping mask to just experiment real quick so we can undo things if we don't like it. Okay, so yeah, one of the things is just I want there to be these kinds of swirls. It's always about just kind of like the different kind of densities of air circulating around, trading position. That's what generates all this wind, right? Eddies and currents. And because I'm using a clipping mask, I can just kind of paint with white or black to erase or return what was previously there. So it just kind of It's a non-destructive way to just kind of experiment. I don't think I like coming down to here. I want this shoulder to stand out on its own a little bit better. So instead I'll have this one come from above, loop around here, and another one kind of going over the shoulder there. And these might connect in the middle and trade places. Okay. So I think that's starting to work. We can have little ones kind of flowing off. Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting, actually. Okay, and then here, I'm just gonna define the shoulder, just, wrong color. That'll be good for doing highlights, since I have the gray backdrop, but I'm just gonna get a little more shape to the muscle structure to have a better understanding of what is going on here. And this muscle would kind of come up over here. Something I feel is that you can never learn enough anatomy. Never learn too much, at least. It's just kind of like how muscles kind of where, what does what. Depending on the build, all kinds of factors to consider. And I'm not totally content with that right there, but it's better than the loose sketch I had, I think. So we're kind of like definitely doing some refining in this drawing, which is good for, you know, going towards a finished piece. But at the same time, I think we're definitely going to want to run it by other people on the team, make sure that everyone likes the direction before I actually like commit this to a render. So I don't want to go like crazy far, which is why today is great, because you know I have a limited time, and so being able to have a cutoff point in less than an hour means that, well, as much as I get done on it today, that's what I'll present to the team, and we can discuss if we want to keep going in this direction or not. Technically, I probably should have developed a couple of different directions to look at, just to make sure I didn't end up kind of skipping over a potentially really interesting idea, but oh, this one just spoke to me well enough that I wanted to see where it could go. And it's one of those things where like where it started, I could see where it might end up being, but it didn't really kind of come across in the sketch. So if I presented it, you know, oh, would people see the same thing, the same potential? Probably not. Again, you never know. Yeah, I guess I'm giving myself excuse as to why I just kept working on this piece. So I wanted to see what it could do. Just trying to get these fingers kind of, I don't know, create a better just ball shape. You know, they kind of like come in towards the center. So I'm just trying to like figure out what each of the fingers might be doing, what direction they're going in, that kind of thing. Like the thumb. I almost feel like maybe the thumb needs to be kind of coming directly at us, but then that's a little harder to read. Yeah, that might be too far over. Maybe it was good where it was. Maybe just a little more forward. But then it creates a potential tangent with that, the bottom of the bicep there. So just need to make sure that they aren't lining too closely. Maybe this part of the hand needs to kind of come forward a little bit more, or not. Maybe not. Maybe this pinky needs to kind of tuck in just a little bit more. And it's also very thick feeling compared to the thumb and the other finger. Maybe I just need to pull that back and bring the heel of the hand into it a little more. Yeah, that heel of the hand might work better. In which case this finger forward. Maybe I need to rotate it a little bit more here. Okay, this hand is going all over the place. Not sure I'm happy with that yet. Maybe it was better before I messed with it too much. Try it where they're not curling nearly as much, just kind of cupping. That might work. I know the thumb is wonky. Let's obliterate the thumb real quick. Unfortunate thing is I've messed around with this so much now that there is no way I have the history states to return it to where it was. So we'll just have to hopefully make something better than it started. Maybe that's good enough for now. Maybe if the thumb is kind of coming forward, maybe up and forward a bit. Here, this open hand maybe is a better kind of motion for it anyways. Feels a little more like it's kind of pushing something forcefully. That's like resisting it a bit. So that might be good. Yeah, I'm not displeased with that. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna actually bring the hand inwards a bit too. Especially since the elbow is out like that. I feel like if I pull this in, first of all, that kind of like cuts through that contrast, the shapes a bit better, and then the direction feels a little more forceful, like it's pushing towards us, which is the feeling I want it to give. You know, it's shoving this wind directly at us now. So I like that. Okay. I'm happy with that. It's still a little bit off maybe, but less so. Maybe this finger just kind of comes straight out. And has a little bit more foreshortening to it maybe. Oh, and these mice would totally have long nails. They don't have nail clippers. What are you thinking? Okay. All right. I think this feels right for that kind of air pocket vacuum blast, Rashukin, whatever. Not a bad suggestion, making the LA shield a bit smaller. I'll toss that the dev's way. Never really kind of like look too hard at that, but you're right, it does draw cover up some of the art. So I'll toss that in our kind of suggestions idea, and it'd be not too hard to do if we kind of like have somewhere to upload it with, kind of like a quality of life patch if we are all interested in making that tweak. Not too high priority, but you know, not a bad idea. All right, so we could also do a little bit more of the runes. Let's say maybe like the knee. The kneecap, let's say, could have Oh, thanks. I'm glad you're liking it. Yeah, I think that it's come together pretty well. I wasn't sure what it would be, but I'm pretty happy with where it's gone. I think I am going to try and get that energy ball feel here real quick. So although there's some nice kind of muscle definition there, we're going to distort it a bit. For whatever reason, my pen, or yeah, my brush was like full opacity. Must have selected my accent brush. Probably when I was using the clipping mask. Alright. Yeah, okay, so I feel like it captures that like shoving the air well enough to go with this kind of design. So that feels good. Alright, cool, yeah. It's almost like pushing that hand further in front. It's almost like it creates this ball of air, this force, and then it like shoves its hand through it, and then it like explodes with wind. Something cool like that. That's kind of what I feel. So that's good. And then let's get that like symbol in the ear. Because, you know, might as well glyph it up. I think, if anything, it'll be pretty subtle on the ear, especially if like it has the exact same symbol right there on the shoulder. I don't want to go too crazy with it to just kind of overtake the image with this. And I mean, that's totally good. I want it to have that kind of a vibe, you know? Like that's kind of the element, you know, I want it to feel more like a spirit, force of nature, an essence of thing, you know, as opposed to like specific mouse living on specific location. It's just more of a kind of like force that shows up. So that's good. I think anyways. I just wonder if like it should have kind of some definition lines anywhere. Maybe not. Might not need it. Especially if there's kind of like this wind just kind of distorting stuff. Yeah, I think that'll be fine when it's rendered. Probably it'll make a little more sense. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. Feel not bad about that. Alright, let's give it a flip. Yeah, it feels like it's kind of coming at you. It's a bit of that kind of foreshortening feeling to it. bring this arm in just a smidge here. Just because that elbow is really sticking out. Yeah, I don't know about the ear mark. Play that down a bit more too. I think if it's just like super subtle, it might work. Okay. Yeah, honestly, even if it feels ethereal, that's fine. Might actually prefer that. Cool. All right. What else? I'm getting pretty hungry. Have not had lunch yet, obviously. I don't know, maybe I'll just kind of go over this, see if there's anything else we want to try, and then maybe end the stream even earlier than expected, which is a first. Yeah, we could do a quick Scribble of the Frost one. We do have half an hour before I plan to leave. Maybe I'll just grab a really quick bite of something. I want to do a quick little thing. Since we are working on grayscale, this is something you can do. Just have an actual pop of brightness. Just to kind of make things really stand out. That's kind of cool. All right. I think that's a good start for that character. I think we can definitely kind of work from that. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna save, for the first time. As I do, which is great, especially since recently I've been having some Photoshop crashes, so good job me. Let me just quickly change back to me biting down on sesame seed that is not actually in my mouth. I do like that it has kept that image. It has not figured itself out at all. It's good. It's good. All right. Go with Warden Gust for now. Cool. All right. So it is finally saved. And back to Photoshop. All right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, can definitely kind of like see what we've tried through the playback on YouTube. I'm into that. So let's do like a super duper quick sketch. And we'll even save this as Warden Frost. Warden Frost reporting in. I don't know. So this one, I think a different shape makes sense. So ice, unless I'm mistaken, has this distinct kind of 6-prong kind of shape to it. And it's just kind of how the crystalline structure of water actually goes from a liquid to a solid. It kind of grows at these angles, you know. So I'm thinking maybe we want the mouse to kind of, you know, use angles like this. So I guess, what is that, like a 30%? Let's be like 90, 45, 360. So I guess 360 divided by 6, which really should be easy, but I am, okay, 60% angles. I'm like lacking caffeine, streamer brain, hungry, so I don't want to do math. But yeah, so if I had this, and then I copied it, and I gave it a 60-degree angle, and then I copied that, and I gave that a 60-degree angle. There we go. So that is kind of some kind of possible direction to use for this character. Just because I feel like that does say cold ice. You know, good asterisks. Always, I don't know. Yeah, snowflake is a giant weapon. I like it. All right, so that's the case. Maybe we kind of like create a gesture using these angles. So maybe there's like an arm ready. It's very angular and stiff in its pose. Oh, I don't like that. Be like its hand here. Just doing some dance moves, you know. Just dancing. Hello, I'm a mouse. Don't believe me? Okay. Goodbye. All right. save this icicle or snowflake there on its own layer, so I can just delete my bad drawings real quick. Okay. Let's see. What else? Snowflake as giant weapon. So ice expands, so maybe we want to have kind of like something that is almost like puffed up feeling. And this probably will kind of have some cloud-like qualities to it, right? Although if we're doing like the fog, maybe this is more appropriate for the fog mouse. Yeah, hail. Could also be hail. Maybe it's just a ball of ice. It's just the biggest piece of hail you've ever seen. It's like trying to use these angles from the kind of snowflake. It like instantly creates a very stiff kind of shape. I mean, maybe if I like tilt it, that might help. So if I like rotate this just to be a little off, that'll allow me to kind of do something at least a little bit more dynamic feeling, but still kind of keeping those angles. Feels so stiff anytime I'm trying to do anything like that. I'll just power through it, see what happens. Again, this is like rough concept sketch phase, so really don't need to try and produce anything of value. Just trying to experiment. It could just feel like a fluffy snowdrift. Again, like, feel like I'm making a cloud now, but hey, we do have one of the wardens potentially being a cloud, so maybe we'll just use this for that. In which case I probably could loosen this kind of stiff feeling. See, I feel like for it to feel more ice-like, I need more kind of hard, sharp edges as opposed to like soft, fluffy. You know, to kind of make it feel more ice-like. And if anything, it'd be more about kind of like icicles and stuff coming off the bottom. Now this one would have a beard made of ice. Yeah, it does. Stuck Snowball Mouse on roids. And I don't think we want all the wardens to necessarily be these big brutes. That's just kind of what I end up drawing a lot of the time for the tough mice. So. Get back here, you whippersnapper. I was thinking if that leg was kind of floating below, it might feel more floaty. But I kind of want to look a little more lumbering. Make it look like it hasn't moved in ages. It's frozen in time. I'm just like picturing it walking through the air, but like freezing the moisture in the air to just step across it. just imagining like the sparkling and like light hitting those kinds of tiny little particles of ice that's just kind of flowing off of it. I feel like that could look really cool. So, I mean, that's just kind of like what, you know, when you're out in the cold and you breathe, there's that fog that, you know, you breathe out. That's just it, kind of like condensing into tiny, tiny ice particles. So I imagine that like that is what this is, but like on a big scale. Which, you know, again, that's a cloud. So, oops. Maybe it is just the cloud aspect. But I mean, if we do go for like fog more specifically, that can be a little bit more, I don't know. It does kind of look hail-like right now, which is cool. Oh yeah, yeah. Just made a mid-jump. It's got the Mario punch going on too. Yeah, just diving at the camera from above. It does look like a toxic spill mouse. Yeah, if it's made out of like small ice particles, then it could just be, you know, floating in the air. Yeah, it would have to be pretty small to actually like stay afloat. Yeah, I don't know. This does feel a little more kind of like fog to me. In which case, if we wanted, we could just go that route, see what that turns into, instead of these kind of icicle kind of drips, which I feel like aren't quite gonna work on this character, at least. If we just go for that kind of like cloud slash fog, that might work. It's just basically a giant dark cluster with eyes peering out. That might impede on your trip. In which case this mouse could be huge. Absolutely mammoth. Kind of like the idea of like a lot of the edges being lost and hidden. and then having some defined edges, like this arm kind of clubbing forward towards you, and then there being this kind of twist, and this knee could be kind of coming at you too. I think maybe it doesn't need to be all wonkily rotated, so I'll slide all this under a bit more, having it lumbering towards us a little bit more obviously, because before it's kind of like, what is the gesture? I don't get it. Just because I was trying to conform to that snowflake a little more. That shape is not necessary for the fog. I do like that beard. Keep it. And it can be lumpier too. Yeah, and there's a certain kind of like spookiness to it, which I think is cool. I mean, that's a good description of what it could be. Just a behemoth surrounded by fog wandering the island. Because they don't need to be floating, because you do encounter them on the islands. I just like the ability for them to kind of travel around. So if they look like they can kind of fly of their own accord, that's probably good. It's like how that beard has a Cthulhu-esque vibe. I like it. Out of the dense fog arrives a mouse made purely of gathered heavy clouds and punches the hunter's trap away with immense pressure. Yeah, I'm into it. make the eyes glow on this, and if I do that, I think I'll perhaps have the eyes glow on the other one too. Just makes them feel more magical and powerful, which is pretty cool. Not gonna lie. Okay, so I'm actually quite pleased with what we got out of this quick sketch. Didn't expect to capture anything that I'd be too fond of, but I think this one's pretty interesting. It feels like clouds of some kind, definitely could be fog. I don't think it would be too far off from being ice if we wanted it to be, or cold. I think we could make that work. But it is coming on 2 o'clock, so that means I'm gonna take my leave for the day. I'm gonna go on my lunch before a company meeting that we're doing on camera, so shortest Feedback Friday art edition, but pretty good. I think we got some good stuff out of this. Yeah, I have that. I'll leave it for like when I do a frost one. Just shrink it down. Don't need to be so huge. There we go, there's just an asterisk over there. Who knows why? Alright, let's try the glowing eyes. I feel like that should be pretty interesting. So doesn't even need it, to be honest. So I don't know if we'll use it. We'll see, you know, like that we can determine later when I've kind of like figured out more about these characters. But yeah, I'm actually pretty stoked about that. It is now 2 o'clock. So Warden of Fog it is. For now. We'll see. You know, these can all change. Just concept phase anyways. But that'll do it for me for today. Sorry my camera got stuck. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for all the incredible input. I definitely know that I wouldn't have gotten where I am on these without your valuable and interesting insights. So much appreciated. Thank you so much. Let me just quickly post the Larry link again for those. Did it? Yeah, fails every time apparently. There we go. There we go. I want to be able to see this. So, is this the Larry link? No, I don't have it copied anymore. I'll just grab it from my chat and and, whoop, and just smash my keyboard and post. There we go. I'll put it on my art page too, so everyone can kind of pass it around easier. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna go on my late lunch and I'll post these to my art page. So until next time, probably 2 weeks, maybe next week. But thanks for hanging out, everyone. Very cool. Good stuff. I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Happy hunting. Catch you later. Bye.